Hi, everybody. I thought I'd share with you one of my favorite stories ever. Who ever heard of a Ferd by Othello Bach? This is just for fun. Chapter 1. Once there was a little Ferd, just an ordinary Ferd, part fish, part bird. And he wanted to find a herd of Ferd, but nobody had ever heard of a Ferd. Now this little Ferd was raised by a nest of Dickens, just ordinary Dickens, part dog, part chickens. But they'd never heard of a Ferd. Ferd was the only Ferd they knew, and they loved him very much. When Ferd was just a baby Ferd, the Dickens gave him a pet, Snider Spider. Now Snider Spider was a hairy little spider whose hair hung from his crown to the ground and all around. He wore a little red baseball cap and 8 tiny tennis shoes. Snider Spider and Ferd were the best of friends. Lucille Dickens, a very motherly Dickens, awakened early each morning, dressed quietly, then woke up everyone else in the Dickens house. She had a particularly nice way of doing this. Wake up in the morning, get up, sleepyheads, get up to the dawning, now get up, get out of bed. Wake up in the morning, wake up in the morn, get up to the dawning, there's a new day being born. Wake up, little children, wake up, sleepyheads, get up, everybody, now get up, get out of bed. Go out, see the sunshine, go out, feel the dew, it's a lovely, lovely morning, it was made just for you. Don't wait until tomorrow, it can't be the same, this very special morning won't come your way again. Of course, everyone woke up in a terrific mood. However, on this particular day, Ferd decided it was time that he and Snider should go find a herd of Ferd. Ferd wanted to know his Ferd family and to know if he was Ferding right. Oh, please don't go, begged the Dickens. We love you very much. Thank you, said Ferd, but it's time for me to find a herd of Ferd. Lucille Dickens cried, but Ferdy, haven't you ever wondered why no Dickens has ever left Dickens Mountain? Ferd had to admit he had not. The truth was, Ferd didn't even know the Dickens lived on a mountain. The only thing he ever wondered about were Ferds, and why no one had ever heard of a Ferd. Well, Lucille Dickens warned, you can't just leave the mountain. There are big, bad boogie monsters at the bottom. Ferd's little Ferd heart skipped a little Ferd beat. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry, he said, but still, I have to go, even if I have to face the boogie monsters. I must find out where I came from, where I'm going, and what I'm supposed to be. Snider Spider shrimbled and shook. He wasn't nearly as brave as Ferd, but he couldn't have cared less what a Ferd was or what it was meant to be. However, Snider did love Ferd a lot and would go anywhere with him, even if he didn't want to go. But Snider couldn't talk, so no one ever knew for sure what he was thinking. They usually knew what he was feeling, though, because Snider giggled and cried, quivered and shook, danced and hummed like everyone else. So with lots of hugs and kisses for everyone and from everyone, Ferd and Snider took off to search for a herd of Ferd. Chapter 2. The farther down the mountain they went, the better they felt. They loved the freedom and excitement, and before they knew it, they were skipping and dancing, rolling and tumbling. Ferd was singing for all the world to hear. I'm so glad. I'm so glad to be just me, to be the me I want to be. I'm so glad to finally be just me, to go wherever I want to go, to find out what I want to know. I'm so glad to finally be just me. I'm excited and delighted and so glad that I decided to break loose and really set me free. No one else can make me do it, bite it off and make me chew it. Hey world, aren't you glad to meet me? Aren't you glad to greet me? Wow! I'll be so glad to find me. I'll even look behind me. I can't be far away, it's true. Hey, I can even feel it. No one will ever steal it. Hey there, mister. Are you too? But soon they were at the bottom of the mountain, and the forest became so thick it grew very dark and shadowy around them. They moved slowly and quietly now, afraid they might alert the big, bad boogie monsters. They crept from tree to bush, from bush to tree, from tree to tree, from bush to bush. Then suddenly a huge limb cracked behind them. With lightning speed, Snider jumped on Ferd's head and pretended to be a hairy hat. Ferd whirled around and stopped. He gasped. A gigantic monster stood just a few feet away. It snarled and took a slow, giant step toward him. Ferd whimpered and backed away. Snider trembled and wailed in his tiny spider voice. Gotcha! A loud voice growled behind them. Ferd froze. Big hairy hands grabbed him. Suddenly there were monsters everywhere. No, screamed Ferd. Please don't hurt us. Shh, hissed Snyder. He didn't like Ferd saying us. He wanted the monsters to think Ferd was alone. Then one of the monsters grabbed Snyder. No, please, cried Ferd. Please don't hurt Snyder. The monsters dangled Snyder over his huge, hungry-looking mouth. Then kerplop! He dropped him onto his big, wet tongue. Snyder threw a terrible fit inside the monster's mouth. He poked and kicked, bit and hit, jumped and fought until the monster's eyes crossed. Then, moaning, the monster opened his great mouth and rolled Snyder out to the end of his tongue. He twirled him around, spun him into the air, flipped him over his head, and batted him with his foot. Snyder sailed like a wet, hairy ball. The monsters played catch with him. Hey, cried Ferd, please don't hurt him. He's my best friend. The monsters stopped and gaped at him. Hurt him? They all asked at once. Why would we hurt him? Ferd sputtered. Because you're big bad boogie monsters. Suddenly all the monsters looked very sad. Well, we're big, they admitted, but we're not bad. In fact, we're just plain old boogie monsters. All we do is boogie. And with that, they all started to dance. It looked like such fun. Ferd and Snyder joined them, and they all boogied and boogied and boogied until they were all boogied out. Then they fell into a great hairy heap, laughing and trying to catch their breath. So what brings you into the woods today? Asked one of the monsters. I'm looking for a herd of birds, said Ferd. Have you ever seen any? Puzzled, the monsters all shook their huge heads. What's a Ferd? I'm a Ferd, said Ferd, part fish, part bird, and I'm looking for a herd of Ferd. Said one of the monsters. Nope, we've never heard of a Ferd, but if we do, we'll tell it you're looking for it. Thanks, said Ferd. He and Snyder left, waving goodbye. The monsters all wiggled their big behinds and said, Come back and boogie sometime. Snyder wiggled his tiny behind and waved his cap. Wow, Ferd said as they continued through the forest. It's too bad the Dickens never left the mountain to meet the monsters, isn't it? Snyder nodded. They've spent their whole life being afraid of something they've never met, Ferd added. Chapter 3. A little later, Ferd and Snyder heard someone crying. They stopped and listened. They followed the sound. It seemed to be coming from a big clump of bushes. Ferd peeked in. What he saw amazed him. There was a big clearing with logs placed in the middle, like a large outdoor theater. The crying came from a hyenant. Just an ordinary hyenant, part hyena, part ant. But he had on a lovely red coat, and he was weeping something terrible. Ferd and Snyder went to see if they could help. Hello, said Ferd. Why are you crying? I thought hyenas were supposed to laugh a lot. Oh, everybody says that. Everybody says that, wailed Hyenat. Well, I don't. I don't know why I don't, but I don't. It takes a lot to even make me smile. But I cry at the silliest things, and once I start crying, I can't stop. Then he bent double, crying great gobs of tears. Gee, that's terrible, said Ferd. Don't you know any good jokes? Crying Hyenat cried even harder. No, he gasped, but I do have a magic coat, and with this magic coat, I can usually get someone to make me stop crying. How's that? Asked Ferd. By having a contest, you... I'm a Ferd, said Ferd, part fish, part bird, and I'm looking for a herd of Ferd. Have you seen any? No, get out of the way, the contest is going to start. Ferd suddenly wondered if he could get into the contest. If he could, he just might be able to get a Ferd out of that magic coat. Can I be in the contest? Ferd blurted. No, cried Hyenat. Sign-ups ended yesterday. Just then a flute started to play. Ferd and Snyder turned just in time to see several lovely woos glide out onto a beautiful pond. Oh, they were just ordinary woos, part worm, part goose, but they did a magnificent water ballet. The wooses sung. We are woos, part worm, part goose, and we can make our necks so loose. Not geese, not weese, we flock, not swarm. A worm and a goose makes woos, not gorm. Then they all swam together in a big circle to take a bow. But when they tried to swim apart, their long worm-like necks got tangled up. They almost choked each other trying to get loose. Then as they swam away, they kissed their lovely wings and said, Oh, he loved us. I just know he loved us. Ferd and Snyder turned to the crying Hyenat. He was still crying. Then, before anything else could happen, out pranced two woolly, shaggy shambles. Just ordinary shambles, part sheep, part camels. They danced and strutted, nodded and bowed. As they sang, however, one shamble did have a bit of difficulty with his hump. It kept slipping, first to one side, then to the other. When it slipped, it was no longer a hump, but a lump. Embarrassed, he kept trying to keep it straight and balanced on his back. The Shambles song. Oh, we are shambles, can't you see? Shambles we happen to be. Not sheep, not camels, just plain shambles. Beautiful shambles we. But we've never seen in all our lives such a weird concoction as you. And we have seen many weird things. Tell us, what do you do? We sing, we dance in long wool pants. We'll jump and smile at you. Oh, please remain, and we'll make a game of trying to figure out you. I'm a Ferd, said Ferd, part fish, part bird. I'm looking for a herd of Ferd. Have you seen any? But the shambles didn't seem to even hear him. As they left, they said, Oh, he loved us. I just know he loved us. The shambles were just barely out of sight when a couple of military-looking driders marched out of the woods. They were ordinary driders, part dragon, part spiders, and it was obvious from the way they looked at Ferd that they had never even heard of a Ferd. They wore fur hats and breathed smoke, and yet they weren't mean-looking driders. Immediately they went into a fast and exciting dance. Their long skinny legs lifted and fell so quickly they became a blur. They squatted and jumped, turned and twirled, and the faster they danced, the harder they breathed. And the harder they breathed, the hotter they smoked. Finally, great rolling flames shot out of their mouths. They burned their feet. That made them dance faster, which made them breathe hotter. Finally, they had no choice. Yelping and hollering, they ran for the pond. Once their feet were cooled, they swam away smiling and saying, He loved us very much. I just know he loved us. But crying hyena had wept all through their song and was still weeping when they left. He sobbed so hard it sounded as if his heart would surely break if he didn't stop. Ferd and Snyder supposed the show was over, when ever so slowly, up walked a blizzard. Just an ordinary blizzard, part bird, part lizard. He was a strange, scroungy, two-feature creature who carried a beat-up old guitar. Hyena, sir, he began with a high, lisping voice. Sir, are you ready for my song? Hyena waved him away. No more, go away. But, sir, said Blizzard, I signed up last week. Oh, very well, gasped Hyena. Get on with it. Ferd and Snyder watched, amazed, as Blizzard walked over to a pile of muck and sticks and stood in the middle of it to sing. He strummed his broken guitar, and suddenly a strange blizzard wind began to circle around him. Then it went out into the whole clearing. It threw leaves and twigs into the air. It picked up Snyder and blew him around in a circle. It dropped him at Hyena's feet. Hyena immediately stopped crying and stared, dumbfounded. Why is it that when we blink, we don't say we have blunk? And no one's been known to flink, although we often flunk. Like some folks' hair seems to kink, yet no one says it conk. And I don't even know I sleep, although I'm told I slump. Why, oh, why do I try? Others would sit down and die. At least they'd have a good cry, but I try and I don't know why. Is a little bit a hink if a whole lot's a hunk? Why don't folks admire my spink? I'm told I've got lots of spunk. Oh, there must be a missing link to which all words are lunk, or they are just a bunch of bink, though you may call it bunk. Well, Hyena started laughing almost immediately when Blizzard started to sing, and before he was through, Hyena was rolling on the ground, holding his sides and yelling, you win, Blizzard. You made me stop crying. All the other two-feature creatures in the contest rushed out to protest. They couldn't believe Blizzard had won. He was terrible, they yelled. We were wonderful. Yes, said Hyena, you were wonderful, but he made me laugh. He asked such funny questions. But he didn't mean to be funny, complained a haughty shamel. Yes, I did, said the Blizzard. I sat up all night practicing that song, just hoping it would make him smile. Well now, Blizzard, my boy, said Hyena, what do you want from my magic coat? Blizzard grinned. Tap shoes. Tap shoes, quarreled the others. Blizzard, you need so much. Why don't you get a new guitar, a new voice, some new feathers? Because I want tap shoes, said Blizzard. With a wide sweep of his hand, Hyena reached into his magic coat. Then with a sudden flourish, he brought it out and said, Ta-da! On his hand was a pair of shiny, black tap shoes. Oh, super, just super, said Blizzard. All the other two-feature creatures stomped off angrily. Ferd moved closer to Hyena. He had to see if he could get a Ferd from that magic coat. Oh, Hyena, sir, could you grant me just one wish? Hyena looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. Grant? Grant? I do not give away wishes. I scrimped and saved half my life for this coat. Ferd nodded sadly. He glanced at Snyder. Snyder trembled because he thought Ferd was going to give him away for a wish. Oh, no, no, Ferd comforted Snyder. I would never trade you. Hyena seemed touched by their friendship. Oh, very well. Just one wish. I want a Ferd like me. There's no such thing, I assure you. Just the same, Hyena reached into his coat and brought out his hand with a loud ta-da! But there was nothing there. "See," said Hyena, "there's no such thing as a Ferd." "I'm a Ferd," protested Ferd, but Hyena just walked away. Ferd sighed. "Come on, Snyder. I guess it was silly to expect magic to solve my problem. Obviously, I'm going to have to keep looking." Chapter 4. It was around noon when Ferd and Snyder happened to cross a creek. There they found Bertels. Just ordinary Bertels, part bear, part turtles. They were passing the lazy afternoon rocking their bulky bare bodies in their great turtle shells, or floating in the creek on their backs, asleep. "Well, looky here," said one of the Bertels. "Looky what the cat drug up." "Hello," said Ferd. "I'm a Ferd, part fish, part bird, and I'm looking for a herd of Ferd. Have you seen any?" They shook their big bare heads and spun their shells around to look at Ferd and Snyder. "Nope," said one Bertel. "Never even heard of a Ferd. Saw a snog one time, though. Strangest thing I ever saw. A snog, part snail, part hog. Yep, a snog it was, all right." Ferd felt more and more disappointed. The Bertels were obviously not going to be any help. "Why do you want one?" asked another Bertel. "Because I am one," said Ferd, "and I just want to know where I came from and what I'm supposed to be." Said another Bertel. "Never worried me. What's supposed to be, I mean. I reckon I just am what I am. Know what I mean?" He paused and scratched his stomach. "I guess some folks just want more." A young, happy-looking Bertel picked up a jug and blew on it a couple times. Another Bertel picked up a wash tub with a wire attached to it. Still another picked up an old scrubboard, and they began to play. Some folks is happy to be just what they is. Other folks, they gotta have more. Some folks is happy just to have 'em a house. Others want winders and a door. Some folks is happy with just one set of clothes. Others want 3 or 4. But we don't like with a shirt on our back. But others want buttons, we're sure. Some folks don't want. Some folks want more. Some folks don't want. Some folks ain't sure. Some folks is happy just to have bare feet. Other folks gotta have socks. Some folks is happy with just one pair of socks. Other folks gotta have lots. Some folks is happy with just one pair of shoes. Others want shoes galore. But if mine had a bottom on the day what I got 'em, I reckon that I won't need no more. Some folks don't want. Some folks want more. Some folks don't want. Some folks ain't sure. Then the Bertels settled back into their comfortable shells. Ferd frowned and said, "Well, I guess I'm like some folks then. I do want more, even windows and doors." "Well, what for?" asked one of the older Bertels. He reached to touch Snyder's spider, but Snyder hissed and jumped back. He made his hair stand straight out. The Bertel drew back. All the others laughed. This embarrassed the Bertel, and he said, "Like I always say, then you best just keep on moving, little Ferdy, 'cause we ain't about to get up and help you find a herd of Ferd." Ferd and Snyder moved past them. Snyder hissed again, just for the fun of it, but most of the Bertels had already gone back to sleep. "You know," said Ferd as they moved on down the creek bank, "sometimes I wish I could be more like the Bertels." Snyder shivered and made a silly face. "I mean it," argued Ferd. "It sure would make life simpler if I just accepted what I saw and what I was told." Snyder giggled and pointed a mocking finger at Ferd. He couldn't imagine Ferd being that way. Chapter 5. A little later, Ferd and Snyder cast long, sad shadows as they moved across the darkening valley. Then a whiff of something delicious curled through the air and teased their noses. When they looked up, they saw a giraffe. Oh, but she was no ordinary giraffe, part giraffe, part mouse. She was a lovely, happy two-featured creature. She took a large, bubbling pot off a campfire. "Good evening, gentlemen," said Miss Giraffe. "You look plum tuckered. How about a little supper?" Ferd and Snyder nodded and smiled. "That smells delicious." "Thank you." She quickly set them a place at the small broken table. "Please sit down." As they ate, Ferd told Miss Giraffe all about trying to find a herd of Ferd. "I see," said Miss Giraffe, "and no one has ever heard of a Ferd?" "That's right," Ferd sighed. Miss Giraffe patted Snyder's head, and Snyder came up out of his chair, enjoying the pat. He ran up Miss Giraffe's long neck and slid down. "Do you know where we should start looking for a herd of Ferd?" asked Ferd. Mr. House picked up a straw hat and cane. "Well, gentlemen, you must always start right where you are. You can't sit around thinking about how hard it is, otherwise you'll never get it did. Can't sit around wishing for the fishes to bite, gotta dig the worms instead. Can't sit around hoping for someone to be great, gotta start being today. Can't sit around moping just thinking and a-hoping, 'cause you'll never make it that way. Can't sit around thinking that you aren't good enough, lest you want to prove that you really ain't. Can't sit around blaming other folks for your luck. It's you who determines if you can or you can't. So get up and get to it. Now don't sit around. Nothing ever changes that way. Get up and get to it. Prove that you can do it. How about getting started today? Yeah, Ferd yelled. You're right, Mrs. Giraffe. I know you're right. I thank you very much for dinner, but as you say, we can't sit around. I understand, Miss Giraffe bowed politely. Good luck. Ferd and Snyder waved and danced happily away, feeling wonderful again. Chapter 6. Soon, though, the valley became so dark, they decided to make a bed and sleep for the night. Snyder snuggled down into a soft mound of grass next to Ferd, but suddenly he jumped up again, twittering excitedly and pointing to lights in the distance. You're right, said Ferd. Maybe there's someone there who can help us, and we shouldn't just sit around. Snyder nodded and ran off towards the lights, but it was a long walk, all the way to the top of a tall hill. But finally they made it. There was a huge house with a large sign in front. Ferd stepped back and read it aloud to Snyder. Welcome, all you poor and weary. Welcome, all you homeless and hungry. Welcome all, welcome one. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Wow, said Ferd, these folks really sound nice. Hurrying across the yard, he bounded up the porch. Ferd knocked loudly, and the door swung open almost at once. Yes, hissed a snooze. Just an ordinary snooze, part snake, part mongoose. Please come in. Ferd and Snyder jumped back, frightened. That's all right, stammered Ferd. We're just looking for a herd of birds. Sorry to have bothered you. Please, hissed the snooze, come in. And with that, the snooze grabbed them both and yanked them inside. Wait, cried Ferd. We'll leave, we'll leave. Never, snapped the snooze. You'll stay, you'll stay. With lightning-fast movements, the snooze tossed Snyder into a cage, locked it, and threw it out the window. Next, she tossed Ferd into a large room and locked the door. Ferd landed hard on his head. He blinked and looked around. Dozens of two-featured creatures stared at him. Well, where am I? He asked. You're in the snooze's prison, said an old, tired two-featured creature, and there's no escape. Ferd frowned and stared at all the creatures sitting on their beds, looking dully at him. Why are they holding us prisoner? Because, said the old two-featured creature, we are different from them. Snoozes like only other snoozes. They do not like anyone who is different. Well, that's silly, said Ferd. Everyone is different in some way. Ferd glanced from one two-featured creature to another. Why do you stay? He asked. Why don't you just leave? You can't leave, all the two-featured creatures shouted at once. Once the snoozes have you, you can't leave. It just can't be done. Don't say it can't be done, Ferd warned. Don't say it can't be done. But it can't, they repeated. It's never been done before. Ferd stood tall as he could, and with all the anger and determination he felt, he yelled. Don't say it can't be done. Don't say it can't be done. Don't say it can't be done. Just tell me that it can't be done, then stand back and watch me do it. Say that something's really tough, and I'll proceed to chew it. Or say that it's impossible, and then I'll do it twice. And if it's a gamble, I'll get out my dice. Reverse psychology, it works quite naturally. Reverse psychology, it works reversibly. Or say that something's easy, and at once you know I'm frightened. Or tell me it's not scary, and right then my fear is heightened. Or say there's nothing to it, and you know I'll surely freeze, 'cause the sure thing always gives me rubber knees. But if you say that any fool can do it, well, I'm no fool, as you can surely see. My card's been punched, and I'm computed through it, and the program reads reverse psychology. Reverse psychology, it works quite naturally. Reverse psychology, it works reversibly. Reverse, reverse, it works and works and works and works until it hurts and hurts and hurts. Reverse, reverse, reverse psychology. Just then the door flew open. What's going on in here? Yelled a snooze, grabbing Ferd and slamming the door. He carried Ferd down a long hallway, opened another door, and pitched Ferd in. Poor Ferd tumbled down a rickety staircase and thudded to the floor. Troublemaker! Yelled the snooze as he stomped away. Ferd dusted himself off and looked around. He was in a basement. Broken furniture and trash were piled everywhere. Bars covered the windows, and cobwebs hung over everything. Slowly Ferd went to the window. A tear slid down his face. Snyder, he called, but no answer came. Snyder's cage was on the far side of the house. Oh, Snyder, I miss you. I'm sorry I got you into this. Ferd stared out at the darkness and cried, wondering if Snyder was okay, and if he should just give up looking for a herd of Ferd. Isn't there anyone in the world who's ever felt like me, who's wondered who they are and just why their life was meant to be? But who do I turn to? Who even cares? Do I just sing to the wind? And it takes my words and just blows on by and they're never heard again? Isn't there anyone in the world who understands how I feel? Who might share a hug or a word? Who knows that my tears are real? Too tired and sad to think or cry any more, Ferd leaned his little furred head on the window, and his little furred heart ached until he thought it would break. Finally, he fell asleep. On the other side of the house, Snyder Spider sat behind the locked cage door, crying for Ferd. Ferd awoke the next morning to the sharp sound of his snooze's voice. "All right, you good-for-nothings. Get up and get to work." Ferd glanced around quickly. He dashed up the stairs and climbed on a pile of boxes stacked by the door. When the snooze poked her head in, Ferd pounced on her. She screeched for help. Ferd darted down the hallway. "Snyder! Snyder!" Ferd screamed. "Come on!" The other snoozes appeared. Ferd shoved past them. He ran for the door. "Snyder!" On the far side of the house, Snyder fought to get out of the cage. He banged against the bars. He bit them. He kicked them. He knew Ferd was escaping, and he wanted to go too. Ferd raced toward the bottom of the hill. The snoozes gave up. Ferd ran too fast for them. "Snyder!" Ferd screamed. "Snyder, where are you?" When Ferd realized he had run off and left his friend, he hung his head in shame. Life would never be the same without Snyder. Poor Snyder. He wouldn't even be in this mess if Ferd hadn't wanted to find a herd of Ferd. Ferd felt worse than he'd ever felt in his whole life. What a terrible thing he had done to go off and leave Snyder. But what Ferd didn't know was that back at the house, Snyder was still fighting, still trying to break free. Finally, he turned the cage over. It rolled on its side. A snooze came running. "Get the spider! He's running away and stealing our cage!" Snyder whirled and threw himself wildly about the cage. More snoozes ran toward him just as the cage door broke open. Snyder darted out. The snoozes knocked each other down trying to catch him. He shot past them like a streak of light. Snyder didn't know Ferd was coming back up the hill. Ferd didn't know Snyder was coming down. And halfway up, or halfway down, they ran smack into each other. It knocked them both stupid. They hugged and kissed and jumped around. Oh, it was good to be together again, and so terrible to have been apart. Chapter 7. Ferd laughed. "Well, I still wish I'd found a herd of Ferd. I really do. Maybe if I tried just one more time." Snyder looked horrified at the very thought of it. Ferd laughed, then threw back his little furred head and cupped his little furred wings around his little furred mouth and yelled, "Ferds! Ferds! I'm looking for a herd of Ferd!" Then the strangest thing happened. A little furred head popped out of a bush, then jumped back again. Ferd and Snyder looked at each other. They both saw it. Ferd cupped his hands and yelled again, "Ferds! Ferds! I'm looking for a herd of Ferd!" It happened again. Ferd heads popped up from the bushes. Then suddenly they were everywhere. There were Ferds and Ferds and Ferds. Everywhere you looked, Ferds were popping up and down out of the bushes. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, maybe even millions of them. "Ferds! Ferds! Ferds!" Ferd cried, jumping around and yelling with glee. "I finally found a herd of Ferd!" He rushed up to the nearest Ferd. "Hello, I finally found a herd of Ferd!" "No, you didn't," said the little Ferd. Ferd drew back in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Sure I did. I'm a Ferd, part fish, part bird, and you're a Ferd." "Oh, no, said the Ferd. "I'm a bish, part bird, part fish. You're a bish, and all those things in the bushes are bishes." "A bish?" asked Ferd. "A bish?" The bish nodded soberly. Snyder Spider made a little chuckling, chittering sound. Then he laughed out loud. He laughed harder and louder, finally rolling on the ground. He licked all 8 of his feet and beat the ground with his hat. Ferd had never heard him laugh so hard. Embarrassed, Ferd said, "All right, Snyder, that's enough." But try as he might, Snyder Spider couldn't stop laughing. After all they had been through, it was just too funny to find out Ferd was really a bish. "So what do bishes do?" Ferd finally asked. The bish shrugged. "We bunch in the bushes." "Why?" asked Ferd. "Because we're bishes." Ferd frowned. "Are you waiting for something?" The bish shrugged again. "I don't know." "Are you hiding?" asked Ferd. "Don't think so," said the bish. "We're just bunching." Snyder laughed so hard he cried. Ferd tried to smile, but couldn't. Finally, he snatched Snyder up by one leg and shook him. "Stop it, Snyder. Now just stop it." Ferd turned to the bish. "Well, do you sing or dance or anything?" The bish dully shook his head. "Nope, we don't sing, we don't dance. We don't even play Monopoly. We just bunch." Ferd stared at him in disbelief. He just couldn't accept that he belonged to a group as boring as the Bishes. So, said the Bish, if you're a Bish, get in the bushes and start bunching. Snyder howled with delight. Ferd gave him another hard yank. Then they both got into the bushes to bunch with the boring Bishes. But the longer they stood there, the harder it was to be quiet. Snyder kept giggling. Ferd grew more and more bored. He shifted from one foot to another, and a twig snapped. Well, I finally found a herd of Ferd and Bishes. Bishes, scolded the Bishes. You found a bunch of Bishes. Now be quiet. Bishes bunch quietly in the bushes. Ferd sighed. It was no use. He could never just stand in the bushes bunching with the boring Bishes. Come on, he said to Snyder. Let's get out of here. But just then faint crying sounds came from as a flower. It was a little girl Bish, her eyes all red from crying. What's the matter? Asked Ferd. Belinda, for that was her name, wiped her eyes. Well, I just keep having this feeling that there's something better than being here bunching in the bushes. Snyder rolled his eyes and nodded as if to say, any fool can see that. Belinda continued, and well, I just keep having this dream. I dream a dream that I love so much, where smiles are warm, love adorns, hearts gently touch, where no tiny treasure, no matter how small, is tucked away there to stay, to wither and fall, where loving is our gladness and caring is our calm, understanding eases sadness and helps the day go on. But I can't really go there. So I go on dreaming this daydream of love. Yes, that's my dream, everything I'm dreaming of. Yes, that's my dream, everything I'm dreaming of. Ferd smiled. Just to look at her made his little furred heart do a little furred flip-flops. You know what, he said. There is such a place. I only just realized it while you were singing. But there is such a place where you can be whatever you want to be anytime you want to be it. Belinda looked confused. Shh, scolded the Bishes. Bishes bunch quietly in the bushes. It's all right, Ferd called to the Bishes. You bunch quietly in the bushes if you want, but I'm not a Bish. I'm a Ferd. And with that, he took Belinda's hand and led her out into the clearing. Snyder ran after them, glad to leave the bushes and the Bishes. Now, said Ferd, about that place in your dreams. Belinda nodded. Yes, it's a place where everyone can be just what they want to be, do what they want to do. Yes, Ferd interrupted. I just realized there is such a place. It's right inside us. It's just being what we want to be and doing what we want to do. But I'm a Bish, said Belinda. Bishes just bunch in the bushes. But they don't have to, cried Ferd. And neither do you. They bunch because they want to. They could sing, they could dance, they could even play Monopoly. But they don't. Belinda smiled. But you're a... Ferd pulled himself up proudly. I'm a Ferd, and it doesn't matter where I came from or what I'm supposed to be. All that matters is where I'm going and what I do. Snyder Spider sighed and rolled his eyes toward heaven as if to say, I thought he would never get that figured out. But you're a Ferd without a herd, said Belinda. Yes, said Ferd, I guess I am. But I'd rather be a Ferd without a herd than a boring Bish bunching in the bushes. Me too, squealed Belinda. Oh, me too. And with that, Ferd and Belinda and Snyder Spider left the boring Bishes bunching in the bushes and danced happily across the valley singing, I'm so glad to be just me. The end.